Welcome to Words on Air. I'm your host, Lindsay Smith. Today in our show, a conversation about publishing. Our guests are Susannah Sharpless, an assistant editor at Grey Wolf Press based in Minneapolis, and Dan Musgrave, who is a writer who writes short stories and essays. He's also a Tulsa Artist Fellow. Right now, he's working on a collaborative memoir with his father about his father's service in Vietnam.
How's it going, Susannah?
Pretty good.
Good.
Happy to be here.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You got in yesterday, correct, from Minneapolis?
Yeah, I lay over in Chicago, but yeah, I got in at like 5:30 yesterday.
Okay,
yeah.
That's kind of like your home base now?
Minneapolis, yeah.
You are a northerner, a Minnesotan?
Yeah, I don't know if I've exactly earned the right to say it, but I'm getting close.
Okay.
It feels like, I grew up in Indiana, but I never really was that interested in claiming like that identity, Hoosierness, but like I'm interested in earning my Minnesotan stripes, so nice. Hopefully I'll get there.
Yeah, so I thought I would start off easily, like learn more about you, kind of your journey, what led you to Grey Wolf.
Yeah.
So you start in Indiana, where do we go from there?
Yeah, it's kind of like, it has kind of a weird path, which is ultimately really nice, I think. But so I grew up in Indiana, and I went to school. I went to Princeton in New Jersey, and when I was there, I've always loved poetry my whole life. And when I was there, I got really involved with the creative writing department. I took a lot of classes, and also I was an assistant to the department, which was like great. It was like so cool. Like all I did was, I made Xeroxes of people's course packets, and I distributed the mail, but I also would just get to go to these dinners with the faculty and visiting writers, and like go to the train station and just pick people, like George Saunders, like get off. Yeah, I'd just be like, I'm 18 years old, and I'm gonna walk you to your hotel now. And so that helped me make a lot of really close relationships with professors. And then at some point I was like, okay, I like poetry. There's a lot of pressure at Princeton to like do something with in your summer internships. Like you're not just allowed to like chill, you have to be advancing yourself. And so I asked a poet a couple years above me who I really admired, like, what do you do with your summer? Like if you don't want to go intern at Goldman or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like, I interned for this press called Copper Canyon, which is a small poetry publisher in Port Townsend, Washington. And so one of my professors was a Copper Canyon poet, and he helped me get this internship, and that's where I really like caught the like publishing bug, just like how cool it was, and really, and this is a lot of what Grey Wolf interns do too. We just sat there and we just read manuscripts. We did some other stuff, like I got to help plan like what a Copper Canyon Instagram might look like, which was fun. But really, what I did was just read people's poetry, and I just like thought it was so cool, and not only to read it, but to think about what it means to make something a book, like not only because I'd just been so concerned with writing poetry and learning about what good poems looked like, and then to actually be like, here are a lot of good poems, and how do you make those into a book? And it's really cool.
So that switch from writer to the publishing side happened, I would say, early for you. Yeah,
it was after my sophomore year of college. Yeah, so it was early, and then I really liked it too, which is a relief, because it's kind of like, as a poet, I'm not going to be able to support myself with poetry, so
what?
Probably not, unless I do really well, unless I really, and like I was not so delusional to think that, but so it's like a relief to be like, this is actually a job that people have, that like, it's not like you're not going to be wealthy, but like you can support yourself, you can have a life, and like work with words, and so. Still be in the literary world. Yeah, exactly, and not feel like you have living paycheck to paycheck. So then after that made me want to do publishing. Then in the spring of my senior year, Grey Wolf was hiring, and I applied for the job, and I made it to the final round, and I didn't get it, and it was, it was a bummer, because it was like a big ending point of my life. Like my undergraduate career has ended. I'm supposed to know what I'm doing now, and I have no idea now. And
why did you pursue Grey Wolf?
Another of my professors, so Tracy Smith, who's Poet Laureate of the United States, Grey Wolf, Pulitzer Prize winner, So she, obviously, I just thought she was amazing, and I still do. And I was lucky enough to be pretty close with her, and I knew, like, through paying attention to her, I knew that she loved Grey Wolf, and when I saw that Grey Wolf was hiring, I, like, reached out to her for some help, and she did help me get through the door there in a way I'm very grateful for. And I knew that Grey Wolf was a nonprofit, just like Copper Canyon, which I really liked, which is really cool. But then when I didn't get the Grey Wolf job, I ended up like a couple months later getting an internship at a for-profit publisher, Bloomsbury. Worked there for a few months, and it was so different. It was like really good to do, just to know that there are actually, it's not all publishing is not the same. There's a lot of different presses doing a lot of different things. And
what's something that stands out as like a stark difference to you? What makes it so?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think a big thing is at Grey Wolf, it's a good symbiotic relationship, because Grey Wolf's whole nonprofit mission is to publish books that other publishers won't. So we need those other publishers to not publish those books so that we can publish them. And it's just about what can make money. So if you're a for-profit publisher, you have to make money, which means that you have to publish, in addition to like great novels and works of nonfiction, you also have to publish like cookbooks and coloring books, which are also great, but like that's not literature, you know, and anyone would admit that. And it's wonderful that those make so much money for publishers and free them up to publish the work of, like, it's so sad that people don't really buy like works of literature in the way that they need a cookbook, but it's a good balance to have, I think, at a for-profit publisher. And it's nice to be at a place that doesn't need to walk that line, to just say like, well, we're going to publish a book of poems because we have like a grant from somebody that allows us to do that, is really cool. It's a cool position to be in. So it is why you have to be in like Minneapolis and not in like the Big Apple. It's hard to be a nonprofit publisher, I imagine, in New York City, but I think people do it.
So you're an editorial assistant? Walk me through what that means. And in the words of Michael Scott, I want you to explain it to me as if I was 5.
That's okay. So, so editorial assistant means that I have a lot of like assistant duties that are not all specifically editorial. A lot of I started at Grey Wolf as an admin assistant, actually. And so when I got promoted, I took some of those administrative responsibilities with me. So that involves a lot of like paying the bills, which is fun. You know, that's not what I imagined being.
Checks.
Yeah, exactly. Not what I imagined being an editorial assistant would be. But a lot of like tying costs to book titles, making sure that like those budget lines look okay. A lot of I always start with the stuff that I consider to be less interesting when I describe this, just because to get it out of the way, but like contract writing, all of which can actually be really interesting. Like I've learned so much about legalese and like what you can say that you're going to do for someone in law is kind of cool. I have a big editorial responsibility is paying royalties and like tracking where the money for our books comes from and making sure the authors get the appropriate share. That's a massive undertaking that I am largely responsible for. And then there's a lot of like more editorial work, which is really like what I'm passionate about. So reading submissions, that's a big part of what I do. I work mostly with the poetry editor, Jeff Schatz, and another editor, Katie Dublinsky, who does a little bit of translation, a little bit nonfiction, some fiction, but largely with Jeff, so largely reading poetry. And just sometimes it's a manuscript from a returning poet where Jeff is like, here's the newest from this poet, can you let me know what you think? And sometimes it's somebody that we're not so familiar with, and sometimes it's somebody that I am just interested in that I can like say like, Jeff, do you want to take a look at this? I think it's pretty good. So that's a big part of what I do. There's a lot of work out there.
Does everybody from top to bottom at Grey Wolf read submissions? Is it something that's on everybody's plate, or?
No, not at all. For when we're close to acquiring something, which feels like it happens more infrequently than I would have imagined, but I think it's just because I actually see the amount of things that cross the board. But when we do acquire manuscripts, then people like from the marketing team get on board just to kind of be like, yeah, like I can see how this book would work in a bookstore or marketplace. The publisher, the head of Grey Wolf, Fiona McRae, she reads everything. So Jeff kind of has, the poetry list is really his. On the fiction side, there's a couple more editors, so I think it's more of a conversation about, but there's 4 acquiring editors at Grey Wolf, so they really have acquiring, meaning like they can make anyone an offer really with Fiona's permission at any time if they think that the work is good. So, but yeah, people start to come in at later stages in the process, but submissions are mostly editorial assistants and editors and interns, our lovely interns who do a lot of reading for us. Yeah.
The groundwork.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it's nice that Grey Wolf as a nonprofit publisher exists in Minneapolis. Like this is maybe not something that the New York ecosystem would allow to flourish. Does Grey Wolf see itself as a northern or midwestern press? Is there something about that locality that is part of their identity?
Definitely, like 100%, definitely. I think it's one of the most interesting things about Grey Wolf, just compared to my brief time at Bloomsbury in New York. I mean, people like in and out, like rotated. I mean, I think I was there for like 3 months, and I would see people leave and come back in that time. Wow. And they would leave and they would go to a slightly better job at another publisher, and then they'd come back to a slightly better job at Bloomsbury. But at Grey Wolf, I mean, I've been there 2.5 years, which like compared to some people in New York, it's a long time to be at a house. But compared to people at Grey Wolf, it's like a blip. I mean, people at Grey Wolf have been there for like 20, 25 years. And I really think, and a lot of them are born and raised in Minnesota or moved to Minnesota for school and really like put roots down. And I think that's like a really wonderful part of being a part of the Minneapolis publishing scene is these like deep roots, but they're not, I think that Minnesota has a reputation. There's this thing called Minnesota nice, of like, we'll be nice to you, we're not really going to let you in. Like, it's fine that you're here, which I think holds some water socially, but I don't think in literary circles, it's such a relatively small community that like you can appear and just be like, I like books and like I would like to read them, and you'll like pretty quickly find your way into these circles, which are, there's not so much prestige and like social positioning, jockeying for who's the coolest writer in town. It's more of just like there's so few that, and everyone is doing such interesting work that people can just really support each other. And nice. I went to a beautiful, for Coffee House Press, a book launch for Human Win, his book, Not Here. And just the amount of poets, local poets that were there, and like people that come from out of town to support that book, it was really amazing. It was like, wow.
So that plays a part in the community of your office.
Yeah.
Does it in any way impact what works speak to you, or what gets selected out of the submissions process?
I think we try to make sure that we're not just privileging this kind of like more usual like East Coast elitist, whatever have you, coastal elite thing. I mean, a lot of our writers live in New York and California, and they're great. They're wonderful writers. But we like to see work that like is more involved with the experience of everyone in between. And we are specifically interested in Minnesota writers too. We love to have local writers there. We publish quite a few local poets and people who have connections to Minnesota in that way. It's really, it makes us feel like part of a community. It makes our donors feel like their money is going to something that they can see the results in their town. And I think it makes our readers really involved and happy. So yeah.
Nice. In that vein, is there anything that makes a manuscript kind of pop? Is there anything specifically that Grey Wolf is looking for? And this could be something that's maybe not consistent from fiction and nonfiction to poetry.
Yeah,
right?
I can't speak to fiction at all because I really read so little in it, but I read so much poetry. It's hard to say. It's like hard to generalize so broadly, but I think it's one of the things is just really, I've noticed like if I get immersed in something, and the immersion that happens is because it's like there's a certain like confidence to the writing where I really feel like I'm in an author's world. Like the author is now saying to me like, I have very clearly conceived what I'm doing, and like you're along for the ride, which is probably an incredibly nebulous answer to the question. Like, but I think because there's so much good writing that's so different. It's like so varied, and I'm always so surprised at like what I find myself really. And if I find myself thinking about it, like if I close the Word document or I put the manuscript down and I like walk around, and I like find myself thinking, it's like, whoa, I really got convinced by whatever this author had to say.
Yeah. Looking at the Grey Wolf catalog and just trying to find, what is it that's going to be the common thread throughout all of these works.
Yeah.
Whereas or.
Yeah. I think a big thing for that also is like, then this is also so impossible to define, but like innovation, whatever that means. But just like someone who's writing in a way that is new or seems new or is combining two old things in a new way. That's something that we actually actively look for. And it's hard. It's a quality that I don't think has any like, I don't think you can be more specific than that.
Right, yeah. I mean, you look at what we look for, and if it's quality writing. That seems to be the common thread.
Yeah,
Quality writing.
yeah.
And that's one of those nebulous, like,
Yeah.
lofty
Yeah.
goals. Everybody's like,
Yeah.
I think I'm quality writing.
Yeah.
You know?
And a lot of people are, and
Yeah.
so
And it still might not fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing is we're alert to and concerned with like whatever's happening in the actual world, like not just the world of people writing.
Right.
So we love work and we're really interested in, like, passionate about publishing work that speaks directly to that moment, those conversations, and
Socially
that kind
conscious.
Of, yeah, exactly.
Contemporary.
Right. That's involved with like people in the world and not only like Shakespeare, but Shakespeare too. But
Sure. Nothing wrong with Old Willie. You
yeah,
know?
exactly.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Grey Wolf says on its mission statement that it seeks to ensure that adventurous readers
Right. Yeah.
can find underrepresented and diverse voices. What's an adventurous reader to you all?
Yeah, really good question. Probably somebody who's willing to read poetry, first
Okay.
of all. But a lot of our books, they do kind of weird things. They have like feints and turns and twists that are not, it's a little bit unexpected. And a reader who is willing to be like, that was cool, when like that turned out to be like a novel written in like a made up computer code from like 50 years in the future. Like, that was cool. That didn't like totally stress me out, which it stresses me out.
Yeah.
But like the willingness to kind of say like, what else can writing do besides tell me a story in a way that I'm very familiar with, beginning, middle, end, or like what else can poetry do besides talk about a beautiful vase, like an urn, you know, or whatever. Like, to say poetry could kind of also look like prose, or it could kind of look like really strange, have pictures in it, that kind of thing. So yeah.
So those people who are looking for that same kind of innovation
Right.
or open to it at least.
Yeah,
Those are your adventurous.
Yeah, exactly.
readers.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's great. It's great that they buy books because
Yeah.
yeah.
In terms of the coming year, the rest of 2018, 2019, anything coming out that you want to plug? Anything that you're excited for that you can mention?
Yeah,
to us?
definitely. The funny thing about publishing is that like we were working on 2018 books like, you know, like a year ago. So I'm having to like because like right now I've been working on books in 2019 and 2020. But some work that I'm really excited about is a Minneapolis-based poet and teacher and editor named Hyde E. Erdrich has edited an anthology of Native American poetry by poets there are 21 of them. It's like 21 poets for the 21st century. And so it's Native American poets who have a few books, but whose like writing hasn't been anthologized in this way exactly.
Nice.
I'm really excited about that. So many poets who are new to everyone at Grey Wolf, and some Grey Wolf poets like Layli Long Soldier. That's a big one. Just published recently, we published some beautiful works of poetry. I mean, I'm mostly familiar with the poetry books, but we just published this beautiful book. I mean, like 3 I can't even talk enough about, but Registers of Illuminated Villages by a poet named Tarfia Faizullah, which is just it's her second collection. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Wade in the Water, Tracy K. Smith, just published. She's poet laureate, as I mentioned. Like,
no big deal.
Yeah, it's huge. It's wonderful, beautiful, and political in a way that her work hasn't explicitly been before, which is really cool. The most recent winner of the Walt Whitman Award, Jenny Shee, her book we just published, and it's very like beautiful and quiet and contemplative, and it's really great. I'm trying to think into September, but I'm unfortunately drawing a blank.
That's okay.
But yeah.
That's okay. Anything you want to see more of? Any topics or styles or something that you feel is being underrepresented or left out at the moment in terms of?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we are lucky that we see a lot of work from a lot of people. I think right now we're really, in the poetry side, we're really interested in kind of like debut collections from writers of a variety of backgrounds. Like, we want to make sure we're not only serving poets who are pretty established or who are writing like a second or third book. And that's why the Walt Whitman Prize is so great, because it gives us direct access to a really good manuscript. The woman who just won that, Emily Scaja, which won't be out till next year, but her manuscript is just like brutal but like riveting and just really good. And yeah, so I think we're really interested in what's emerging, and not just because Grey Wolf is a lucky to be in a position that a lot of established poets would love to have their work, and we would love their work. But it's nice to make sure that we're not getting too swept away.
Yeah. Again, that innovation seems to be
right. Yeah. We don't want to lose that thread.
Yeah. And I want to get to one thing I have in my notes. Gourd.
Oh my God.
Can we get some sort of insight into? I just have gourd exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point.
Is this from my Twitter?
I don't know. I've just got it scribbled in here. I'm not sure.
It's hilarious. I'm trying. Yeah. What's the like spin that I can put on this? It is related to a Grey Wolf poetry book in a way. So I jokingly had a gourd on my desk that I made a huge fuss over, just as a way of just being stupid. Like, here's my gourd. It's very beautiful. Don't you love my gourd? Just like a small little tiny thing. And then we had an event at the Minneapolis Institute of Art where it was like our Instagram, run by Karen Gu, the publicity associate, is like a beautiful thing. And so our fun little event was people could make their own bookstagram. Our publicist put my gourd was taken there as a prop. Publicist took a picture of it, a very beautiful picture, and a picture of Whereas by Layli Long Soldier. And the Ace Hotel, and I'm not exactly sure how this works, but does some residency with writers, and so has an interest in books, and so retweeted that. And I'm making a dumb joke, said like, look, there's my gourd on the Ace Hotel's Twitter. And then it's just like the internet is the weirdest place in the world, where the Ace Hotel, like, we had some back and forth about a gourd, and then they were going to send me one, then they didn't. But then just like last week in the mail, I received a painting of a gourd, beautiful, and a Keats poem, and really just like, this is so strange, but like so wonderful.
The internet is a strange, beautiful place.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of, we're running out of time, but I wanted you to be able to remember your time in Tulsa. I hope it's not weird. I wrapped it myself.
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
But I just want to make sure.
Should I hold this up? Gourds? Yeah, wow. Wonderful.
It might be a little not safe for work. It's kind of a little avant-garde.
Yeah, it's very beautiful, very well done. Yeah, wow. Thank you. It's hilarious.
Something for you to remember.
Thank you.